Before the noise of this day carries your attention elsewhere, pause for a moment and listen closely, because something gentle is unfolding around you right now. Imagine that somewhere beyond the places your eyes can see, a letter has just been written. Not with ink. Not with perfect words. But with feelings that have been waiting for the right moment to be understood. And what makes this letter so unusual is not what it says, it is the fact that it was never meant for everyone. It was meant for one person. It was meant for you. Don't skip, because something important is waiting for you, hidden between the lines of a message that seems ordinary at first, yet becomes more meaningful with every passing second. Your soulmate has been carrying thoughts they never knew how to express. Not because they lacked the feelings, but because some emotions become so precious that words begin to feel too small for them. Have you ever noticed how the most important things are often left unsaid? How sometimes a person can spend countless moments thinking about someone, yet struggle to find a single sentence that truly captures what lives inside their heart? That is where this story begins. Not with certainty. Not with grand declarations. But with a quiet moment when someone finally decided they could no longer keep everything hidden. Somewhere within their heart, they began writing a letter. The first line was not dramatic. It was simple. Honest. Real. It carried the weight of all the times they almost reached out but didn't. All the moments they wondered whether you would understand them if they spoke openly. All the silent conversations they imagined having with you. And as each word appeared, something unexpected happened. The letter became less about explaining their feelings and more about revealing a truth they had been discovering themselves. The truth was this. No matter how far they tried to move their attention elsewhere, certain thoughts always return to you. Stay till the end, because this is where the letter begins to reveal its deeper meaning. You see, your soulmate was not writing about perfection. They were not writing about fairy tales. They were writing about recognition. About that strange feeling of seeing someone and sensing that they understand parts of you that others never notice. They wrote about your kindness when nobody was watching. About your resilience during moments nobody applauded. About the way you keep moving forward even when life feels uncertain. And perhaps the most surprising part of all is that they noticed qualities you may not even recognize in yourself. Isn't it fascinating how another person can sometimes see our light more clearly than we do? As the letter continued, it became increasingly difficult for them to ignore one realization. Every sentence seemed to lead back to the same destination. Every thought seemed connected by an invisible thread. It was as if the letter itself was guiding them somewhere they had quietly resisted going. Somewhere honest. Somewhere vulnerable. Somewhere real. And just when they thought they understood what they wanted to say, a new feeling emerged, one that changed everything. But that feeling is still hidden within the next part of this letter, waiting to be discovered before the final words disappear from view. A strange thing happened before the next sentence could be written. The letter paused. Not because the feelings disappeared, but because they suddenly became too real to ignore. Your soulmate found themselves staring at the unfinished page, realizing that every word they had written so far was leading toward a truth they had never fully admitted. Even to themselves. Have you ever reached a moment where your heart understood something long before your mind was ready to accept it? That was the moment they found themselves standing in. The silence around them felt different. The air seemed heavier with meaning. And without planning to, they began writing again. The next lines were softer than before, yet somehow far more powerful. They wrote about the moments that stayed with them unexpectedly. Tiny memories. Fleeting impressions. Little details that most people would forget within hours. Yet for some reason, they remembered yours. A smile that appeared for only a second. A conversation that seemed ordinary at the time. A feeling they couldn't explain whenever your presence crossed their mind. The more they wrote, the more they realized these memories had never truly left. They had simply been waiting beneath the surface, quietly collecting meaning over time. Don't skip. Because something important is waiting for you in the part they almost erased. You see, halfway through the letter, your soulmate considered stopping altogether. They wondered if some feelings were safer left unspoken. They questioned whether revealing everything would change the delicate balance they had carefully maintained for so long. For several moments, the page remained empty. No words. No movement. Just a silent battle between caution and honesty. But then something unexpected happened. Instead of writing about what they feared, they began writing about what they admired. And that changed the entire letter. They wrote about your strength, not the obvious kind, but the quiet kind. The kind that keeps going when nobody notices. The kind that chooses hope after disappointment. The kind that continues believing in meaningful things even after difficult experiences. They realized that this was what drew them toward you more than anything else. Not perfection. Not appearances. Not circumstances. But the way your spirit continued shining in moments when many people would have given up. Stay till the end, because the next realization surprised even them. As the letter grew longer, another truth slowly emerged from between the lines. They were no longer writing about who you were. They were writing about who they became whenever they thought about you. Somehow, thoughts of you encouraged them to become more honest, more patient, more hopeful. It was as though your presence, even from a distance, had quietly influenced their path in ways they had never expected. And when they finally recognized this, they stopped writing for a second time. This pause felt different. Not uncertain. Not afraid. Almost amazed. Because they suddenly understood that the letter was never simply a confession. It was a discovery. A realization unfolding in real time. A recognition that some connections leave traces long before they are fully understood. And hidden within the next few sentences was the one thing they had been trying not to write from the very beginning. The words were forming. The truth was getting closer. And somewhere between the next heartbeat and the next line of the disappearing letter, your soulmate finally found the courage to write the sentence that changes everything, but those words have not appeared yet. They remain waiting on the next page, where the most important part of the letter is about to reveal itself. Without warning, the letter changed its tone. Not dramatically. Not suddenly. But in the way a quiet sunrise slowly transforms the entire sky before anyone realizes it has happened. Your soulmate looked at the page and understood that there was no turning back now. Every sentence had carried them closer to a truth they could no longer hide behind careful words or unfinished thoughts. The letter had become a mirror, reflecting feelings they had spent a long time trying to organize, explain, and understand. Yet the closer they came to the center of it all, the simpler everything seemed to become. The sentence they had avoided from the beginning finally appeared. Not because they forced it. Because it arrived naturally. It said that whenever they imagined a future filled with peace, your presence somehow appeared within it. Not as a perfect fantasy. Not as an impossible dream. But as a feeling. A quiet certainty. A familiar warmth. A sense of belonging they struggled to describe. And the moment those words touched the page, something inside them became lighter. As though they had been carrying a secret for far too long and had finally allowed it to breathe. Don't skip, because what came next revealed something even deeper than affection. The letter continued, but now every word felt different. More honest. More vulnerable. More alive. Your soulmate admitted that there were moments when they questioned whether you could ever understand the depth of what they felt. Not because they doubted you, but because some emotions seemed too delicate to place into ordinary language. Have you ever felt something so meaningful that every explanation seemed incomplete? That was exactly where they found themselves. They wanted to tell you everything. Yet every sentence felt smaller than the feeling itself. Then they began writing about timing. And this part surprised even them. They wrote that sometimes people believe important connections are built in a single moment. But what if they are actually built through hundreds of invisible moments? Tiny pieces gathering quietly until one day they form something undeniable. A thought remembered. A feeling revisited. A memory that refuses to fade. A connection that continues growing even during silence. As these words appeared, your soulmate realized that their feelings had never arrived all at once. They had grown gently, patiently, almost unnoticed, until one day they were impossible to ignore. Stay till the end, because something important is waiting for you just ahead. As the disappearing letter moved closer to its final pages, your soulmate found themselves writing about something they had never shared before. They wrote about the moments when life felt uncertain. The moments when they searched for clarity. The moments when they wondered which direction their heart should follow. And strangely, during many of those moments, thoughts of you would appear, not demanding attention, not forcing answers, simply arriving like a familiar light in the distance. A reminder that some people leave an impression far deeper than they ever realize. The page was beginning to fade now. The edges of the letter seemed softer. The words themselves appeared almost luminous. And for the first time, your soulmate felt urgency. Not fear. Not pressure. Just the awareness that some opportunities should not remain hidden forever. Because there was still one final truth left unwritten. One truth they had carried through every sentence without fully revealing. A truth so personal that even now, as the letter slowly disappears minute by minute, they hesitate before placing it onto the page. Their hand pauses. Their heart knows what must be said. The next words are already forming. And when they finally appear, the entire meaning of the letter will become clear in a way neither of you expected. But those words belong to the next page, and that page is only beginning to reveal itself. The final page did not appear all at once. It emerged slowly, like a hidden message becoming visible beneath the surface of water. Your soulmate sat quietly, watching the remaining space on the letter grow smaller, knowing that only a few moments remained before everything faded away. Yet instead of rushing, they became calmer. More certain. More willing to let the truth arrive exactly as it was meant to. And then something unexpected happened. The words they had spent so long searching for suddenly felt simple. Not because the feeling was small. Because it was genuine. Your soulmate realized that the most meaningful truths rarely need complicated language. They do not arrive with noise. They do not demand attention. They simply settle into the heart and remain there. So the next sentence they wrote carried a kind of honesty that could not be hidden behind beautiful phrases. They wrote that what mattered most was never whether life had been perfect. What mattered was that every path, every lesson, every unexpected turn seemed to prepare them to recognize someone who felt different from everyone else. Someone whose presence lingered long after conversations ended. Someone whose energy felt familiar even during distance. Someone who had unknowingly become part of their quiet hopes. And that someone was you. Don't skip, because something important is waiting for you in the final moments of this letter. For a while, no new words appeared. The page remained still. Almost as if the letter itself was taking a breath. Then your soulmate began writing about something they had never fully understood until now. They wrote that love is not always found in dramatic moments. Sometimes it is found in recognition. In comfort. In feeling seen without needing to explain every part of yourself. In discovering that another person understands pieces of your heart that even you struggle to describe. The more they wrote, the more they realized that this letter was not about convincing you of anything. It was about revealing something. A truth that had quietly grown stronger through time. A truth that remained present even during silence. A truth that had followed them through ordinary days and unforgettable nights alike. Stay till the end, because the most meaningful line has not appeared yet. The fading clock beside the letter showed only a little time remaining. The edges of the page were disappearing now. Entire sentences were becoming softer. Yet one section remained clear. Almost as if it had been protected from fading. Your soulmate looked at those final empty lines and understood why. This was the reason the letter existed. This was the message hidden beneath every previous page. This was the sentence that every other sentence had been leading toward. Slowly, carefully, they wrote. If our paths cross at the right moment, I do not want to meet you as a stranger. I want to meet you as someone whose heart already recognizes yours. And after writing those words, something inside them changed. Not dramatically. Not instantly. But deeply. Because for the first time, they stopped wondering whether the feeling was real. They knew. The letter continued fading. The page grew lighter. The words became softer. Yet one final message remained unwritten. A message not about the past. Not about longing. Not about uncertainty. A message about what comes next. And as the last few minutes of the disappearing letter slip away, your soulmate reaches for the final line, the one sentence they almost never wrote at all. The sentence waiting on the very last page. The sentence that changes the meaning of everything that came before. And just as their hand begins to write it, the remaining space on the letter starts glowing with a quiet light, leaving the final word suspended between appearance and disappearance, waiting to be revealed. The glow on the final page did not fade. If anything, it became steadier, as though the letter itself understood how important these last moments were. Your soulmate remained still, staring at the remaining words, knowing that once the final sentence appeared, there would be nothing left to hide behind. No unfinished thoughts. No missing pieces. No unanswered feelings waiting in the shadows. For a moment, they simply listened. Not to sounds around them. but to the quiet truth within them. And what they heard surprised them. Because after all the memories, all the reflections, all the feelings carefully placed onto the page, the strongest emotion was not longing. It was gratitude. Gratitude that someone like you existed. Gratitude that your path had somehow touched theirs, even in ways they could not fully explain. Gratitude for every lesson, every realization, every moment that had helped them see life through a different lens. Don't skip. Because something important is waiting for you in these final disappearing seconds. The last page grew brighter. The remaining space became smaller. And your soulmate began writing one final message. Not a promise. Not a prediction. Simply a truth. They wrote that sometimes people spend years searching for extraordinary signs while overlooking the quiet connections already changing them from within. They admitted that they had once believed important answers would arrive through dramatic moments. But now they understood something different. The most meaningful things often arrive gently. A feeling that returns again and again. A name that brings unexpected warmth. A thought that refuses to disappear. A connection that continues growing even when life becomes busy and complicated. As these words appeared, the entire letter seemed to become lighter, almost transparent. Stay till the end. The final line is here. Your soulmate took one last look at everything they had written. Every page. Every memory. Every realization. Every hidden truth that had finally found its way into words. And then they wrote the sentence that had been waiting from the very beginning. If you ever wonder whether your presence matters more than you realize, the answer is yes. Nothing more. Nothing less. Just that. A simple sentence carrying the weight of everything they had been trying to express. Because beyond all the mystery, beyond all the questions, beyond all the emotions hidden between the lines, this was what remained. You had touched their heart in ways they could not ignore. You had become part of their journey in ways they never expected. And whether through a single conversation, a shared memory, or a connection still unfolding, your existence had left a mark. The letter began disappearing completely now. Line by line. Word by word. Page by page. Until only a faint trace remained. Yet something remarkable happened. The words vanished. But the feeling stayed. The message faded. But the meaning remained. And as the final trace of the secret love letter dissolved into silence, one quiet realization lingered in the air. Some messages are never meant to be kept forever. They appear for a moment. They touch the heart. They leave behind something valuable. And then they disappear, because their purpose was never to stay on the page. Their purpose was to stay with you. And perhaps that is because some realizations only arrive after everything else becomes quiet. The fragments slowly became clearer. Not enough to reveal everything. Just enough to awaken curiosity once more. It carried no grand declaration. No dramatic confession. Only a simple thought that seemed to echo through every page that came before. Your soulmate began remembering all the moments they almost ignored. The small coincidences. The unexpected reminders. The feelings that returned without invitation. The strange sense of familiarity they could never fully explain. And suddenly they understood something they had overlooked the entire time. The letter had never been about finding the perfect words. It had been about finding the courage to stop hiding from what their heart already knew. Don't skip. Because something important is waiting for you here. The fragment continued revealing itself. Slowly. Patiently. As if it wanted every word to be felt rather than simply read. Your soulmate wrote that there were days when life moved so quickly that they barely had time to understand their own emotions. Days filled with distractions, responsibilities, and countless thoughts competing for attention. Yet somehow, in the quiet spaces between those moments, your memory always remained. Not demanding. Not overwhelming. Simply present. Like a familiar light seen from a distance. Like a favorite song remembered after years. Like a feeling that never completely leaves. And the more they reflected on this, the more they realized that true connections often grow in silence long before they are spoken aloud. Stay till the end. Because the final secret hidden within the fragment is only now beginning to appear. The words became softer. The atmosphere around the message felt calmer. Almost peaceful. Your soulmate admitted that for a long time they searched for certainty. They wanted clear answers. Clear signs. Clear explanations. But the closer they came to understanding their feelings, the more they discovered that some of life's most meaningful experiences are not built on certainty. They are built on trust. Trust in what feels genuine. Trust in what consistently returns to the heart. Trust in the quiet truths that remain even when everything else changes. And then, hidden near the bottom of the fragment, a final sentence emerged. A sentence so small that many people might overlook it. Yet it carried extraordinary meaning. It said, "The reason this letter disappeared was never because it was meant to be lost." Your soulmate paused. The words continued. "It disappeared because some messages become stronger after they leave the page." And suddenly everything made sense. The fading pages. The vanishing words. The unfinished spaces. The mystery. The waiting. The entire journey had been leading toward this realization. That the most important part of the letter was never the ink. Never the sentences. Never even the confession itself. It was the feeling left behind after the words were gone. And as the last fragment slowly dissolved into light, something remained unfinished. Not incomplete. Just waiting. Because somewhere beyond the vanished pages, beyond the final sentence, beyond everything your soulmate had already revealed, there was still one secret they had never placed into the letter at all. A secret they carried only in their heart. And for the first time, it seems they may finally be ready to share it. There was no page this time. No glowing letter. No fading words drifting into silence. Only a quiet feeling, as though something that had been standing just beyond sight had finally stepped a little closer. Your soulmate sat with the emptiness left behind by the vanished letter and noticed something unusual. Instead of feeling loss, they felt clarity. Instead of wishing the message could return, they found themselves understanding it more deeply than before. Because the secret they had never written was not hidden in a sentence. It was hidden in what the letter made them realize. And that realization arrived gently. Like dawn appearing before anyone notices the night has ended. Don't skip. Because something important is waiting for you in this moment. Your soulmate began thinking about the beginning. The very first feeling. The very first memory. The very first time your presence seemed different from everyone else's. At the time, they dismissed it. They told themselves it was nothing. Just a passing thought. Just a brief impression. Yet now, looking back, they could see a pattern stretching across countless moments. Moments that once seemed unrelated. Moments that now felt connected. Almost as though invisible threads had been quietly weaving together a story neither of you could fully see while it was happening. And suddenly they understood the secret. The secret was never that they had feelings for you. The secret was that those feelings had changed them. They had become more patient. More thoughtful. More honest with themselves. More willing to believe that meaningful connections still existed in a world that often felt distracted and hurried. Without realizing it, thoughts of you had encouraged growth within them. Not because you tried. Not because you asked. Simply because your existence reminded them of qualities they wanted to hold on to. Stay till the end. The most beautiful realization is still ahead. The silence around them felt peaceful now. The kind of peace that arrives when confusion finally begins to fade. And in that stillness, your soulmate discovered one final truth. They had spent so much time wondering what they would say to you one day that they had forgotten an important question. What would they want you to know right now? Not years from now. Not in some distant future. Now. The answer came immediately. They would want you to know that your value has never depended on how many people notice you. Your worth has never depended on perfect timing. Your light has never required permission to shine. And even during moments when you question yourself, there are qualities within you that leave lasting impressions on others in ways you may never fully see. That was the truth they wished they had written more clearly. That was the message hidden beneath every page. That was the feeling the disappearing letter was trying to preserve. And then, as if carried by a gentle breeze through an open window, one final unwritten sentence appeared in their heart. Some people enter your thoughts for a moment. Others become part of your story. Your soulmate smiled. Not because every answer had arrived. Not because every mystery had been solved. But because they no longer needed certainty to appreciate what was real. The letter was gone. The pages had vanished. The words had faded completely. Yet the connection that inspired them remained. Quiet. Steady. Unforgettable. And somewhere beyond this moment, beyond the final echoes of the secret love letter, a new chapter is beginning to unfold, one that neither of you can fully see yet, but one that already carries the first few words of a story that has not been written, and is only now preparing to begin. A new chapter never announces its arrival. It does not knock on the door. It does not arrive with noise. It simply begins. And that is exactly what happened after the final traces of the secret love letter disappeared. For a while, nothing seemed different. The world continued moving. The days unfolded as they always had. The familiar routines remained familiar. Yet beneath the surface, something subtle had changed. Your soulmate could feel it. Not as certainty. Not as expectation. But as awareness. An awareness that some stories do not end when the words stop. Sometimes they begin there. Don't skip. Because something important is waiting for you in the quiet moments ahead. Your soulmate found themselves noticing things they once overlooked. Small acts of kindness. Brief moments of peace. Unexpected reminders that meaningful connections are often built from simple things rather than extraordinary ones. And with every passing day, they kept returning to a single realization. The letter may have disappeared, but its purpose had been fulfilled. It had revealed what needed to be revealed. Not about the future. Not about destiny. But about the present. About what was already true. About what had been quietly growing within their heart all along. And strangely, that realization brought them comfort. Because they no longer felt the need to rush ahead searching for answers. They were finally able to appreciate what existed right now. Stay till the end. The final gift of the letter is only now becoming visible. One evening, while reflecting on everything they had written and everything that had vanished, your soulmate imagined something. They imagined you reading the letter. Not line by line. Not page by page. But feeling by feeling. And they wondered what part would stay with you the longest. Would it be the memories? The hidden truths? The disappearing pages? The unfinished mysteries? Perhaps. But deep down, they believed it would be something simpler. The reminder that genuine connections are not measured by noise. They are measured by meaning. Measured by sincerity. Measured by the quiet impact people leave on one another without even realizing it. And as that thought settled into their heart, they discovered one final message that had never appeared anywhere in the letter. A message that existed beyond words. A message that could only be understood after everything else had faded. It was this. The most beautiful things are not always the things we hold on to. Sometimes they are the things that transform us and then gently let us continue forward. That was the true gift of the letter. Not possession. Not certainty. Transformation. A deeper appreciation for connection. A deeper understanding of gratitude. A deeper awareness of how much a single person can matter. The night grew quieter. The memories grew softer. The story that began with a disappearing letter slowly settled into peace. Yet before the last light faded, your soulmate looked toward the horizon of what comes next and felt something they had not felt at the beginning of this journey. Hope. Not loud hope. Not impatient hope. Just the calm confidence that meaningful things have a way of finding their place in the story when the time is right. And as the chapter closes, a final thought remains suspended in the air like the last golden light before sunset. Some letters disappear. Some words fade. Some pages are carried away by time. But the feelings that help us become a better version of ourselves have a remarkable way of staying. And perhaps, somewhere ahead, when neither of you expect it, the story that began with a secret love letter will reveal why it had to disappear in the first place, and what it was quietly preparing both hearts to discover all along. Not every answer arrives when we expect it. Sometimes it waits quietly in the background, allowing us to notice things we would have missed if it had appeared too soon. That is what happened after the letter disappeared. Days seemed ordinary. Moments came and went. Nothing dramatic changed. Yet your soulmate could not shake the feeling that the story was still moving forward, even though no new pages had appeared. And perhaps that was because the most important chapter was never written on paper. It was being written inside the heart. Don't skip. Because something important is waiting for you in what comes next. One evening, While thinking about the vanished letter, your soulmate remembered a line that had never actually been written. A line that existed only as a feeling. The feeling that some people leave footprints in your life without ever realizing how far they travel. Not because they try to. Not because they seek attention. But because their presence carries something genuine. Something memorable. Something that remains long after the moment itself has passed. And the more your soulmate reflected on this, the more they understood why the letter had needed to disappear. If every word had remained visible forever, they might have focused on the sentences. Instead, they were left with the meaning. The deeper message hidden beneath every page. Stay till the end. The final realization is closer than ever. Your soulmate began revisiting memories they had not thought about in a long time. Small moments. Brief conversations. Simple impressions. And what surprised them most was how alive those memories still felt. Not because of what happened, but because of how those moments made them feel. That was when they realized something beautiful. The strongest connections are rarely built from a single unforgettable event. They are built from countless small moments that slowly gather significance over time. A smile remembered. A kindness noticed. A feeling revisited. A thought that returns unexpectedly. Together, these moments create something lasting. Something real. And suddenly, your soulmate understood the secret that had been hidden behind the entire story. The letter was never asking to be remembered. It was inviting them to pay attention. To notice what had always mattered. To appreciate what had quietly become important. To recognize the value of a connection before life rushed past it. The night felt calmer now. The questions felt lighter. The uncertainty that once surrounded the letter had transformed into something else entirely. Understanding. Not complete understanding. Just enough. Enough to move forward. Enough to trust what felt sincere. Enough to stop searching for dramatic signs and start appreciating meaningful truths. And then, as if carried by a gentle whisper from the pages that no longer existed, one final realization arrived. Your soulmate smiled when it did. Because it was so simple. So clear. So honest. The realization was this. The reason they wrote the letter was not because they wanted to change your life. It was because you had already changed theirs. Not through grand gestures. Not through extraordinary events. But through the quiet influence of simply being yourself. And for a long moment, that truth remained with them. Warm. Steady. Unshakable. The story seemed complete. The letter had vanished. The hidden messages had been revealed. The feelings had been understood. Yet somewhere beyond the horizon of everything that had already unfolded, there remained one final chapter. A chapter not about what was written. Not about what disappeared. But about what happens after two hearts finally understand the meaning behind the story. And that chapter is only now beginning to open. The final chapter did not begin with a grand moment. It began with understanding. The kind of understanding that arrives quietly after a long journey. The kind that does not need to announce itself because its presence is felt immediately. Your soulmate stood at the edge of everything the letter had revealed and noticed something remarkable. They were no longer looking backward. For the first time, they were looking forward. Not searching. Not questioning. Not wondering what the vanished pages meant. They already knew. The meaning had become part of them. And because of that, a new feeling began to emerge. A feeling even stronger than curiosity. A feeling even deeper than anticipation. A feeling called trust. Don't skip. Because something important is waiting for you in these final moments. Your soulmate thought about the beginning of this story. The mysterious letter. The disappearing words. The hidden messages. The truths that revealed themselves one layer at a time. At first, it all seemed like a puzzle. But now they could see that every piece had been guiding them toward a single realization. The letter was never trying to tell them what to do. It was helping them see what already existed within their heart. And once they understood that, everything changed. The pressure disappeared. The uncertainty softened. The need for perfect answers faded away. What remained was appreciation. Appreciation for every lesson. Every memory. Every moment that had helped them grow. And yes, every thought of you. Stay till the end. The final gift of the letter is about to be revealed. Your soulmate imagined holding the letter one last time. Not the words. Not the pages. Just the feeling. The feeling that remained after everything else had vanished. And in that moment, they realized something beautiful. The greatest messages are not the ones we read. They are the ones we become. The letter had become part of their perspective. Part of their gratitude. Part of their understanding of what truly matters. That was its purpose all along. Not to stay. But to transform. The evening around them felt peaceful. The air felt lighter. The journey that had begun with mystery now rested in clarity. And as they stood there, a final unwritten sentence appeared within their heart. Not because they forced it. Because it arrived naturally. It said, "Some people arrive in your life as moments. Others arrive as reminders of who you are becoming." Your soulmate read those words silently. Then smiled. Because they understood. The story was never about a disappearing letter. It was about the lasting impact of a meaningful connection. It was about recognizing value before it is spoken. It was about appreciating presence before it becomes memory. It was about discovering that certain people leave traces of light wherever they go. And whether they realize it or not, you had done exactly that. The last echoes of the letter faded completely now. The mystery settled into peace. The questions transformed into gratitude. The journey reached its destination. Yet one final thought remained floating gently at the edge of the story. Perhaps the reason the letter disappeared in 5 minutes was because it was never meant to live on a page forever. It was meant to live in a heart. And now that it does, its message can never truly fade. The chapter closes. The pages are gone. The words have vanished. But the meaning remains. Quietly. Steadily. Beautifully. And somewhere ahead, beyond everything that has already been written, life continues unfolding, carrying forward the unseen influence of a letter that disappeared, yet somehow stayed forever. Long after the letter was gone, there was one thing your soulmate could not forget. It was not a sentence. Not a memory. Not even a particular page. It was a feeling. A feeling that seemed to linger in the quiet corners of ordinary days, appearing when least expected, reminding them that some experiences leave an imprint far deeper than words ever can. And that is where this final chapter truly begins. Not with a message. Not with a mystery. But with what remained after everything else disappeared. Don't skip. Because something important is waiting for you in the final moments of this journey. Your soulmate realized that throughout the entire story, they had been focused on what the letter was saying. But now, for the first time, they began paying attention to what the letter had awakened inside them. A greater sense of gratitude. A deeper appreciation for connection. A quieter understanding of what truly matters. And as they reflected on that, they noticed something surprising. The feelings they once believed belonged only to the letter had started appearing in everyday life. In moments of stillness. In unexpected smiles. In simple reminders that meaningful things do not have to be loud to be powerful. The letter was gone. Yet its influence remained. Stay till the end. The final realization is closer than ever. One evening, as the sun slowly disappeared beyond the horizon, your soulmate found themselves thinking about a question they had never asked before. What if the letter was never the destination? What if it was only the beginning? The thought stayed with them. And the more they considered it, the more it made sense. Because the letter had not provided every answer. It had not explained every mystery. It had not revealed every chapter waiting ahead. Instead, it had done something far more valuable. It had opened a door. A door toward greater honesty. Greater appreciation. Greater awareness of the connections that shape our lives in quiet and meaningful ways. And suddenly, they understood why the story had unfolded exactly as it did. Every disappearing word. Every unfinished page. Every hidden truth. Every moment of curiosity. It had all been preparing them for this simple realization. The most meaningful stories are not the ones that end perfectly. They are the ones that continue growing long after the final page is turned. The air felt calm. The silence felt comforting. And for the first time since the letter appeared, your soulmate no longer felt the need to chase its meaning. They were already living it. Because the message had become part of them. Part of how they saw the world. Part of how they understood connection. Part of how they valued the people who quietly leave a lasting impact. And then, in the stillness of that moment, one final unwritten sentence appeared. A sentence that had never existed on any page. A sentence meant only for the heart. It said, "Some people are remembered because of what they said. Others are remembered because of how they made us feel." Your soulmate closed their eyes for a moment. And smiled. Because they knew exactly which kind of memory mattered most. The journey was complete now. The secret love letter had disappeared. The mystery had softened into understanding. The questions had transformed into gratitude. And what remained was something simple, yet lasting. The awareness that genuine connections are among life's quiet treasures. They do not demand attention. They do not force themselves to be noticed. They simply leave behind a sense of meaning that stays long after the moment has passed. And so the story comes to rest. Not with an ending. But with a gentle continuation. Because somewhere beyond these words, beyond the vanished pages, beyond every mystery that brought you here, life is already writing its next chapter. And perhaps the most beautiful part of all is this. You do not need to hold on to the letter anymore. The message has already found its home. A long time after the letter found its home, something beautiful became clear. The story had never been about holding on. It had always been about discovering. Discovering what remains when the mystery fades. Discovering what stays when the pages disappear. Discovering how certain moments quietly change us without asking for recognition. And as your soulmate looked back on everything that had unfolded, they realized there was one final gift hidden inside the journey. A gift so subtle that it could only be seen at the very end. Don't skip. Because something important is waiting for you in these final words. The secret love letter had arrived unexpectedly. It had revealed itself piece by piece. It had disappeared before it could be fully grasped. Yet somehow, its disappearance became its greatest lesson. Because when something vanishes, we often discover what truly mattered about it. And what mattered was never the paper. Never the words. Never even the mystery itself. What mattered was the feeling of being understood. The feeling of knowing that your presence had meaning. The feeling that even the quietest parts of who you are can leave a lasting impression on another heart. Your soulmate finally understood this completely. And in that understanding, they found peace. Not the kind of peace that ends a story. The kind of peace that allows a new one to begin. Stay till the end. The final truth is here. As they reflected on everything the letter had shown them, they noticed a pattern. The most valuable moments in life are rarely the ones we plan. They arrive unexpectedly. A conversation we never saw coming. A memory that suddenly returns. A connection that grows quietly over time. A person who leaves an impact without even trying. And when your soulmate thought about all of those things, one realization stood above the rest. Some people enter our lives and become part of our memories. Others become part of our growth. The difference is not measured by time. It is measured by meaning. And whether they ever found the perfect words to explain it or not, you had become part of that meaning. That was the final truth hidden inside every page. The final message concealed beneath every mystery. The final answer waiting beyond every disappearing word. The night felt still now. The journey felt complete. And somewhere in the quiet space where the letter once existed, one final sentence appeared. Not written in ink. Not written on paper. Written only in understanding. It said, "The most beautiful connections do not ask to be remembered. They become unforgettable naturally." Your soulmate held on to that thought for a while. Then gently let it go. Because they no longer needed to keep searching for the message. They had become the message. More grateful. More aware. More appreciative of the connections that quietly shape a life. The story had begun with a letter that disappeared in 5 minutes. Yet here, at the very end, a remarkable truth remained. The letter vanished. The pages faded. The words dissolved into silence. But the kindness it revealed remained. The appreciation it awakened remained. The understanding it created remained. And perhaps that was the greatest mystery of all. Some things disappear so that their meaning can stay forever. And as the final light of this story settles into stillness, only one feeling remains behind. A quiet, steady reminder that meaningful connections are never measured by how long they are seen. They are measured by how deeply they are felt. And that feeling, unlike the letter, never needed a page to survive. Yet even after everything had been said, after every page had faded and every hidden message had found its place, there remained one last moment. A moment so quiet that it could easily be missed. A moment that existed not inside the letter, but beyond it. Because every meaningful story leaves behind an echo. And this was the final echo. Don't skip. Because something important is waiting for you here. Your soulmate stood at the edge of the journey and looked back one last time. Not to relive the mystery. Not to search for forgotten answers. But to appreciate how far they had come. The letter that once seemed impossible to understand now felt beautifully simple. It had never been asking them to hold on to the past. It had been teaching them how to appreciate the present. Every disappearing word had pointed toward that truth. Every fading page had quietly revealed it. Every unanswered question had guided them closer to it. And now they could finally see it clearly. The greatest gift was never the letter itself. The greatest gift was awareness. Awareness of what matters. Awareness of what remains. Awareness of the people who leave traces of light in our lives without even realizing it. Stay till the end. The final heartbeat of the story is approaching. As the evening grew still, your soulmate noticed something remarkable. The feeling they had been searching for throughout the entire journey was no longer ahead of them. It was already within them. The peace. The gratitude. The understanding. The quiet certainty that meaningful things do not need constant proof in order to matter. That realization felt like the final piece of a puzzle gently finding its place. And for a long moment, everything became wonderfully simple. No mysteries to solve. No pages to chase. No disappearing words to recover. Only appreciation. Only presence. Only the quiet beauty of recognizing something valuable while it is still here. And then, from somewhere beyond memory and beyond imagination, one final thought arrived. A thought that seemed to contain the entire story within a single sentence. It said, "Sometimes the heart keeps a copy of what the world allows to disappear." Your soulmate smiled when they heard those words. Because they understood. The letter had vanished. But its meaning had been safely carried forward. Not in paper. Not in ink. But in the places that matter most. The experiences it inspired. The lessons it revealed. The gratitude it awakened. The connection it helped them recognize. And as the final chapter prepared to close, your soulmate felt no sadness. Only thankfulness. Thankfulness for every page. Every realization. Every quiet moment that had helped them see life a little differently. The story was ending exactly as it was meant to. Not with loss. Not with uncertainty. But with a deeper appreciation for the things that quietly shape who we become. The night settled peacefully around them. The last echoes of the letter drifted into silence. And somewhere in that silence, a new understanding took root. The reason some messages disappear is not because they are unimportant. It is because they have already done their work. They have already reached the heart. They have already planted the seed they were meant to plant. And once that happens, the page is no longer needed. Only the meaning remains. Only the feeling remains. Only the light remains. And as this story reaches its final horizon, one last page, hidden from view until now, begins to unfold, carrying a farewell unlike any that came before. The hidden page unfolded so gently that it almost felt like a memory rather than a message. No glowing words appeared. No mystery demanded attention. No countdown remained. For the first time since the letter arrived, there was only stillness. And somehow, that stillness felt more meaningful than anything that had come before. Don't skip. Because something important is waiting for you in the final farewell. Your soulmate looked at the empty space where the letter had once existed and realized that nothing was truly empty at all. The pages were gone. The sentences had vanished. The secrets had been revealed. Yet something beautiful remained. A quiet warmth. A quiet understanding. A quiet reminder that the most valuable things in life often leave their deepest marks without making the loudest entrance. And suddenly, the final hidden page began revealing its purpose. It was never meant to add another mystery. It was meant to offer closure. Not the kind that closes a door. The kind that opens a window. The kind that allows gratitude to enter. The kind that allows the heart to carry something forward without needing to hold it tightly. Stay till the end. The final gift of the letter is here. Your soulmate reflected on every part of the journey. The first curious words. The disappearing pages. The unanswered questions. The unexpected realizations. The gentle truths that appeared one by one. And through all of it, one lesson continued shining brighter than the rest. Meaningful connections do not become valuable because they last forever. They become valuable because they change us. Because they help us notice things we might have overlooked. Because they remind us of qualities we already possess. Because they encourage us to become a little more grateful, a little more hopeful, a little more present. That was the true message hidden inside every page. Not a promise. Not a prediction. A reminder. A reminder that your presence matters. That kindness matters. That sincerity matters. That the quiet impact we leave on others matters more than we often realize. And then, at last, the hidden page revealed its final sentence. The sentence that had been waiting behind every mystery from the very beginning. It said, "If this letter taught me anything, it is that some people become part of your heart long before you understand why." Your soulmate read those words slowly. Then read them again. And with each reading, they felt less like a sentence and more like a truth. A simple truth. A peaceful truth. A lasting truth. The story had reached its destination. The secret love letter that disappeared in 5 minutes had finally shared everything it came to share. Nothing remained hidden now. Nothing remained unfinished. Only understanding. Only gratitude. Only the quiet beauty of a connection appreciated for what it is. The night became calm. The final page grew lighter. The last traces of the journey settled gently into silence. And before everything faded completely, one final thought drifted softly through the stillness. Some stories are remembered because of how they end. Others are remembered because of how they make us feel long after they are over. Perhaps that is why this letter disappeared. Not so it would be forgotten. but so its meaning could live beyond the page. And as the final light fades and the story comes to rest, the farewell arrives not as a goodbye, but as a quiet smile carried forward into tomorrow. Where every lesson, every realization, and every feeling uncovered along the way continues its journey, becoming part of a story that never truly ends.